The Crypto Markets Update is brought to you by KuCoin, the best place to find the next crypto gem. All right, joining us now to dive into the crypto markets further is futures FX trader veteran Peter Brandt, founder of Factor Trading. Hello there, Peter. Thanks for joining us. So you've been given credit for correctly predicting Bitcoin's steep price correction in 2018. 10 months ago, you were on our show predicting that Bitcoin would hit 200,000. So what went wrong?
Well, nothing went wrong. You know, when you predict a price like 200,000 or 100,000 or a million, markets are going to do what markets are going to do on their own time schedule. I don't dictate to markets when they must reach a certain price or whether they will reach a certain price. I mean, to a certain degree, the reality is we may think we know what the markets are going to do. We may be convinced we know what the market's going to do. In reality, we're just taking a guess. And that's all that we try to do is take an educated guess. Do I remain committed to the narrative of Bitcoin as somehow replacing fiat currencies and being foundational to a global monetary system? I still buy that narrative and believe in it. That doesn't mean the market's going to go straight from price X to price Y just because I happen to have a certain belief.
Well, you sent us this chart here. Maybe you can walk us through it. Like, what will it take for us to get to $200,000 as you predicted last year?
Well, I think it's going to take a market that's going to go up on a parabolic basis. And that's what Bitcoin has done. All it means when a market advances parabolically is it advances in an accelerated manner. Bitcoin's done that 4 times through its history, and we're in that 4th time. And so if you see the curve at the bottom of that market, I would think that Bitcoin will trade sideways. I would hope that Bitcoin could even go down and through the 30,000 level. You know, one of the problems we've had with Bitcoin during this decline is we have not seen the panic, liquidation, get me out selling volume that we've seen in the past, that we've seen throughout the history of Bitcoin. This has been an orderly decline up at the high 60s level. We have not seen panic sellers come in here. And it's very difficult to argue that the market's going to see a shorter term bottom until we finally get kind of that wash out, I want out, I don't care what I believe long-term Bitcoin, I just want to end the pain. Until we see that from speculators, completely wash out the speculators, redistribute those coins into strong hands, I think Bitcoin will remain under pressure. We're bouncing here. We may bounce back to 40, 42, but I think this correction in Bitcoin will continue for a bit here. If you look, Bitcoin's really done nothing in the last 12 months, other than having a lot of people put on laser eyes on their Twitter account, with most of those off now. When we get rid of the laser eyes, then it's probably time to want to own Bitcoin.
You know, Peter, having hope and losing all hope and being full of despair is something I love. But nonetheless, you know, we see this thing happening now where people are saying, oh, Bitcoin is correlating, crypto correlated to the NASDAQ. And I went back and looked at it using a 90-day correlation over the past year. It's always been within a range of about 0.2, 0.3. And that's kind of similar to the S&P. So what's happening here? I mean, like, what exactly is going on? What's driving this market right now? Is it despair and hopelessness for some, at least, when it comes to the equity markets, particularly in tech? Or is it the Fed? What do you think is driving this sell-off right now?
No, when we have volatility that enters markets, we go into a situation where it's all one market. Everything will correlate because you generally have liquidation. You move into a liquidating market, or you move into a period where most assets are appreciating. People are stumped by the fact that Bitcoin might be correlated to the equity market. But, for me, it's a no-brainer because when you think about it, Bitcoin is denominated in fiat currencies, in US dollar. When Bitcoin goes up, it means the relative value of the dollar is going down. When equities go up, it means the relative purchasing power of the US dollar as represented by equities is also going down. And so if you believe in a long-term narrative that fiat currencies will become worthless over time, that equates to bullish equity prices and bullish crypto prices.
So that's over the long term. Short term, next couple of weeks or so. What would you look at to determine where Bitcoin is headed over the next, several days? Are there any other factors that you would maybe watch to say, hey, this could indicate a price movement in Bitcoin, or do you think that that's not useful?
I'd look at a couple of things. I'm going to respond to market, not predict markets. But I've been waiting during the decline for a big panic sell volume spike to say we've reached some sort of terminal bottom. We have not seen that yet. We've seen some volume expansion, but we haven't seen the kind of volume expansion that we've seen at previous short-term bottoms in Bitcoin. I would love to see Bitcoin wash out 30,000, go down to 27, 28, huge volume spike. Despair accelerates even more. Then we have a bottom, a tradable bottom. In the meanwhile, I think we're just locked into a trading range here between 33 and 42, and we'll go up and down. You know what? I think there's a lot of emotional psychology correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin. I've seen markets correlate, uncorrelate over time. I've done this now for 46 years. You get these correlations that get locked in, and sooner or later, they're no longer locked in. And so for the time being, Bitcoin and equities will be correlated. But, if we should see a volume spike on the downside, volume by a strong move up for 2 or 3 days and increase volume to the upside, then I think when bull market's back on track.
Peter, so when we've had a week like this where the crypto market is just crashing precipitously and nobody really knows precisely why, all the sort of crypto skeptics come out of the woodwork. In particular, I'm hearing a lot from friends and family who are like, what is this asset? It has no fundamentals. It's just a casino. It's all speculation. How do you respond to that? I would actually like your help because I don't know how to respond to that because I'm hearing a lot of that over the past week.
Yeah, look, the Bitcoin story is a store of value story. It's a story in an asset that is computerized because we live in a modern era where people have trust that it's going to hold its value over time in terms of purchasing power of other things. When I was born, $1 is now worth 7 cents. And if there's one trade that I can guarantee people of, it's that over their lifetime, they're going to see the purchasing power of fiat currencies be trashed. Now, purchasing power needs to be withheld in something. The Bitcoin story is that Bitcoin will remain a solid, stable store of value. That doesn't change. Just because Bitcoin goes down 50% does not change that narrative. If you look at Bitcoin, it has had a history of these huge parabolic 10x, 20x, 30x advances, followed by 85% corrections. So what that we have a 50% correction? Bitcoin history is loaded with 50% correction. It's good that we're seeing fear. Fear will put in a bottom. Greed puts in tops, fear puts in bottoms. The fact that we're generating a high fear index, to me, indicates that we're getting close to where Bitcoin can stabilize and we can then launch the next parabolic advance or strong advance that might be 2x, 3x, 4x, whatever the case may be in Bitcoin. I can't join the negative narrative, after we've seen a 50% decline in Bitcoin. Now is the time to start recommitting to a long-term narrative. Either we buy it or we don't buy it. If you don't buy it, you should not own any Bitcoin. If you buy it, you need to look for opportunities to increase your position.
So Peter, I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember when gold had a parabolic rise as well. And so we're seeing now we've long passed those parabolic rises from the 1970s. Remember, we had that rise up and down, and now here we are close to about 2000 or so. What are you seeing happening in hard assets like gold?
You know, a lot of people, particularly the crypto enthusiasts, think gold is just an asset from the past. I don't believe that. Frankly, think gold will also retain its value. Maybe it will always underperform Bitcoin from here on out. But yeah, gold has basically just been in a 10 years trading range. I think gold is preparing for another big advance. Now, people that are familiar with crypto get spoiled when you talk about a 2x or 3x advance. They go, I'm not interested in that. Well, I am interested in that. I'm interested in placing money in assets that I think can advance relative to its expression in US dollars. Bitcoin's putting in what as a classical chart is what I see as a 10-year cup and handle pattern. I think we are in the preparation to see a very strong move in gold back into the mid 3,000 level. Again, that seems boring to people who trade altcoins, but for those of us who are a little bit older that still like traditional commodities, that's a great potential trade.
Do you think, Peter, that over the longer term, when we're looking at a longer term narrative, that Bitcoin will actually perform more like a hedge against risk and more like the digital gold that it's supposed to be? Because it hasn't exactly been performing like that lately, but do you feel like over the long term it has those prospects?
Well, I mean, if you look at a really long-term chart of Bitcoin that perhaps goes back to its inception, or at least back 10, 11 years, this decline in Bitcoin is really nothing to panic about, jump off the ship. I mean, we've had much more significant declines in Bitcoin than we're seeing right now. We've seen at least 4 or 5, 85% declines in Bitcoin along the way, and Bitcoin's managed to continue to charge forward. And so the fact that we've had a 50, 55% decline, actually 2 this year, is really, to me, a buying opportunity, not an opportunity for despair. I mean, look, people get fearful. I get it. People have regret that perhaps buyers regret. Let's get rid of all the people who have buyers regret and have them stop their pain, and then we can find a bottom in Bitcoin. But Bitcoin's going to bottom when it's ready to bottom. We don't get to dictate to Bitcoin that you need to bottom this month, you need to bottom within the next 3 months. Bitcoin will find a low when it finds a low.
Well, Peter, if you had to pick one particular chart indicator to tell us where Bitcoin will head over the next week or two, what would that be, and what would it suggest?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, and markets never do what I really hope they're going to do. I mean, we can create little stereos in our head that says, this is what I'd love to have happen. What I'd like to have happen is Bitcoin bounces up here to 40 to 42, has one more slam down, and actually can penetrate that 29, 28,000 level. And finally, we get a seller's panic, which we have not had. We have not had a seller's panic in this market. We can get a seller's panic somewhere in the next 30 to 60 days. Bitcoin drops below 28, stabilizes, and moves back up into the trading range above 30. And we start to see some upside volume. Perhaps we're at a lower level then, perhaps we're at a slightly higher level then. But I'm really not going to panic here, Bitcoin between 30,000 and 5,000.
Peter, your favorite indicator?
That's not price.
Okay.
Like indicators.
Fair enough.
Indicators are a derivative of price. Why study a derivative when we can study price?